Today on In Studio, I'm joined by Matt Francis, founder and CEO of Pattern Data. Thanks for joining us, Matt.
Thanks, Gordon. Happy to be here.
For those who may not be familiar with Pattern Data, what exactly do you do? Who do you serve, and where does Pattern fit into the industry?
Pattern is an AI-first software platform. We founded it in 2020. We serve law firms on the plaintiff and defense side, neutrals such as special masters, and claims administrators, mostly in large-scale complex litigation. Our software delivers a few things. We efficiently evaluate mass tort cases. We apply settlement rules and allocation methodologies, help clients understand data on populations to help parties negotiate a resolution, and produce work product that is frequently required by courts or opposing counsel or as part of a settlement process.
And so,
where do we
go ahead?
Sorry, where do we fit? We're not general purpose software. We're very tailored to the mass tort use case and high volume complex litigation. So for law firms at any stage, it's hugely valuable to quickly and deeply understand the docket and what actions need to be taken on the cases. That's true whether the firms are screening cases on a new litigation based on limited criteria or fully developing cases based on the current criteria in view of the litigation, or later on preparing to enter a settlement process. We also, I mentioned claims administrators. For claims roles at settlements, we serve in a role to supply technology to the administrators to process cases and perform what's commonly called in the industry allocation, which is determining the value of cases based on a settlement agreement and the associated criteria.
Maybe for the listener, level set, what was the world like before Pattern? And maybe that's for the law firms or administrators separately, but how did they process or administer claims, and what was broken about that system?
Yeah, historically, reviewing claimant records for a law firm or claims registrations for a claims administrator was exclusively a labor-driven process. In the mass tort context, the challenges with that are the volume of content. These are typically not acute events like an accident case may be. In these cases, you're looking at product usage or exposure, an injury that may have occurred 10, 20 or more years ago. So you end up with a large volume of content of medical records over several years or decades. The other challenge is the criteria in these cases. So the duration of these cases is several years. The science is typically not settled in early litigation or in even the middle part of the litigation. So the criteria by which firms are evaluating dockets changes over the course of the litigation. And if if you're exclusively using labor to do this work, is first, you'll collect far less data because every data point about a case carries an incremental cost. Secondly, it becomes nearly impossible to respond to changes in the litigation criteria in the time that is available to do so. So a big part of why many law firms in the industry just wouldn't take action to evaluate cases multiple times over the course of litigation is because they didn't know where the criteria sets were going, and they didn't want to incur the cost and time associated with the rework. And that's true for evaluating the cases. In terms of valuing the cases, by firms, that was always very limited, back of the envelope math based on limited factors, plug limited data sets into a spreadsheet and try to do some computations to figure out what the cases may be worth in a settlement.
Maybe, Matt, make it tangible for the listener a little bit. Like a law firm adopts pattern. What does that mean? Like, what is the technology platform? How do they interact with it throughout kind of the life of a case?
Yeah. So the way that most of the firms operated in the past is with highly fragmented processes and collection of vendors. So the data you really may need could live in multiple different systems or with vendors. You could have intake living in one system, medical records getting reviewed, manually or through outsourced vendors, some of the data in CRMs, some of the data in spreadsheets. And when it's time to do something with the information, you need to grab somebody to kind of stitch it together, re-review the cases, modify the data structures. So the way firms use pattern, we deploy what is called a lens for each litigation. It's highly tailored and trained to the criteria sets for that litigation at that time, as well as looking ahead to the future. It is designed to be the single structured system across the entire case's life, holding all of the critical data that you would need to do evaluation, valuation, get you to a settlement in the future. So you could think of the platform for each litigation as 3 products aligned to the firm's gating criteria. So if we start at intake for a law firm, where the objective is to screen the cases and determine if cases meet their intake criteria, we feed in the client's intake data. As records come in, are ingested, we process them, analyze them for the firm's intake criteria. This is typically, a limited set of factors like product, usage, exposure timelines, diagnoses, diagnostic evidentiary weight, how good is the diagnosis? And that's real-time analysis happening same day as intake data and records are coming in that can be efficiently validated by a law firm staff. So that's kind of the first screening product that is being deployed at intake. Then you have this subset of cases that meet criteria that feed directly into our development product for that litigation that is a deeper evidence development phase to better understand the cases. So the firm is now interested in, for the cases that met the intake gating criteria, what are the treatment patterns? Like, how severely injured was this individual based on the current criteria? What are the risk factors, the things that that we should be aware of? What gaps exist that we need to close and go collect information on or validate? And then finally, if a settlement is released, we have a settlement product on that same lens, and the platform takes all of the structured and validated data and calculates each of the cases' eligibility under the settlement, settlement points, or how they may be valued under a matrix, and generates work product, proof packets, and other things that the firm would need to submit, to a neutral or a claims administrator.
If we dig into the intake side, and you mentioned the concept of like valuing a case, and for a customer or client understanding, what cases to take or not, what claimants to work with. Can you help us illuminate a little bit of like, what are some of those factors, those data points that by using pattern, you can quickly, efficiently highlight those, maybe value a case in a way that wasn't possible before?
Yeah, I mean, this is a challenge because it's different for every litigation, and this is where I think our specialization is so important. The facts are the facts are different for every litigation and could change during the litigation. So our approach is to really understand deeply each of the litigations that we're training and developing a lens for. What the current state is true from law firms and from research, where things could head. And it's more than just gating criteria, which cases are viable, which cases are not viable. It's about the spectrum of viable claims, the strengths and weaknesses across those. The factors, like at a high level, even though they are highly specific to each of these litigations, you're going to be looking at product use or environmental exposure, duration, dosage, time used, latency. Again, the diagnosis is obviously universally key in these. What is the type of diagnosis? That gets very specific in mass tort cases too. Clinically, this is where like interpretation is super relevant. You can have a dividing line on cancer subtypes, for example, of whether a case meets criteria or does not meet criteria. Those are just a few of the examples of the inputs that are considered when doing scoring.
And if you think about that middle bucket of the process, the like deeper evidentiary aspects of a mass tort case, what role does pattern play in driving like efficiencies for customers, either from a time perspective? I mean, you mentioned that these cases can be years. And so like, is there an efficiency play? Is there a compliance play or a quality aspect that by working with pattern, a customer has a higher degree of confidence that their claims submitted are viable or valuable? How do you think about that?
Yeah, so I think about it as all of these things. So first, I would say speed to insight. So our view is there's a lot of great mass tort firms. Again, like on both sides of the aisle, but they're handicapped by information. And so our mission is within same day of processing client documents, medical records, claim submissions, we can give our customers great objective truth data about dockets of cases at scale. And that enables them to be better informed and better navigate litigation and navigate potential resolution conversations in later litigation when those discussions are happening. In terms of efficiency, I mean, labor pools of people are pretty inefficient to do this individually. And so reliably, we see 7 to 10x better throughput on reviewing cases, and provide a lot of optionality for the customer on how they want to configure those workflows and do that validation. I think a big value add of the platform is calling out specific types of facts on cases that need intervention or deserve human expert review and validation of those. So you have much more optionality in your workflow in which you choose to go in and validate. And then confidence, a lot of money, on the plaintiff side, you could say a lot of money is left on the table, again, based on objective truths. You need the information to know what should I go and do to close gaps on these cases. And finally, I would say at settlement, as it relates to confidence, some of these, when these settlements are announced, some of the criteria is highly complex and is not necessarily what firms historically have worked cases up against. And so you have this kind of mad dash that burns out teams to try to close gaps, review records, be confident in a very limited window of time, 60 days, 90 days, 120 days. It's not a lot of time on thousands of clients. And so, one of our missions is to really help increase their confidence and their ability to communicate with and educate claimants on choices and the work that the firm has done in preparing those cases for resolution, which the claimants have been obviously waiting a long time for in some of these matters.
That's awesome. Maybe level set a little bit on the industry. You mentioned business founded in 2020. It's been an incredible ride of growth for Pattern. You've been in this industry prior to starting the business. Talk a little bit about how the industry has evolved a little bit, where the industry is today, and receptivity to adopting technology like Pattern, and where is it today?
Yeah, it's a really fun time today. I mean, in 2020, as you may know, Gordon, there wasn't a ton of interest by way of investment in this space, and that has totally changed. So firms have more options, and I think that investment is pushing technology companies to be better. And better serve law firms and claims administrators in these processes. So from a process technology standpoint, things have changed rapidly, and I think firms, maybe not like other industries, firms are much more open and seeking out what what AI can do for them, I guess, but more importantly, I think what products are available that can help them with their workflows, better understand their cases and their data. I think the maybe more specific thing in this industry that has changed is I think leadership law firms on both sides of the aisle and the courts recognize that there's just this huge volume of cases and not a great source of objective information available to help the parties navigate litigation and eventually a resolution. And so case vetting requirements, brought by courts and MDLs have started to change. We've seen much more support from leadership level firms to leverage our products in MDLs to better understand kind of the population of claimants. So I think all good things ahead. The adoption isn't, it's not, I'd say it's not like super easy in this industry, but a lot more interest in trying to deploy new tools.
Yeah. And you mentioned AI and some of those tools. I want to come back to that, but first, as Pattern continues to penetrate the industry, drive value for its customers, you drive efficiencies. You want to automate probably as much as possible, but there's still a human component to these cases, right? And so, where is that today? And like, what aspect will a human continue to own forever here in mass torts? And where is that involvement, that expertise needed?
Yeah, I mean, the human expertise is really important in these cases. There's a ton of nuance to them. Like our view is human expertise is critical. It just needs to be efficiently deployed. So you don't want a skilled staff member of a legal office, or many of these firms employ clinical folks, nurses directly. You want to make them as efficient as possible and know where to intervene them in cases. Our approach to that, much of the platform is designed to pull a human into an edge case where intervention is needed. We built a lot of flexibility in human workflow. For example, if you have a case and you're evaluating 10 entirely different facts that are going to drive an outcome for that case, some are complex and some are relatively simple. Diagnostic reports, pathology reports that are key evidence that are going to determine somebody's placement in a grid. There can be nuance to those. The clinical interpretation is difficult. And so when we run our analysis and process and kind of grade our confidence in those, we enable a firm to have a pool of experts just focus on those, edge cases, as distinguished from something that's relatively simple to do, like medical history or smoking history. These things are, near 100% confident in the extraction and analysis capabilities. So human expertise will remain super important in this space. The reality is there is a ton of work in this industry. There are, volumes more cases than legal staff available for this work. And so, we've just seen really efficient deployment of human capital on the platform.
Yeah, I mean, I would just double down from our side of what we see broadly in legal tech. I think, wow, I think the promises of we will replace everything is fairly short-sighted when you think about, one, the comment you just made on the volume of work to be done. There's plenty for you to do to still surface to the expert. And then there's a role for judgment and expertise here. And obviously, I think Pattern brings a great deal of that, but probably your customers get a level of confidence in your expertise, but also knowing they'll be involved in the process. Maybe circling back to the AI topic and tools. We're a biased party here. We're a big believer in what you're doing, and the business have been a part of the story for a while. We think it's fairly clear Pattern has owned the kind of the market leadership role here in what you do. That being said, as you noted, this space has gotten more interesting. More dollars have flown into the space. As a result, you probably see people claiming to do similar things. Just talk a little bit about what you see out there from maybe more generalist, broad AI platforms that report to be able to do some of the things that you can do versus your approach, and how do you differentiate?
Yeah, I mean, our difference really is our domain expertise and how we built the operational workflow platform for these specific complex use cases. General AI is, a technology. We're not document review. That would probably be the easiest kind of confusion. We're not document review. We're not a general purpose language model that can read a medical record and give you a narrative summary. We really don't focus on chronologies either that are kind of the industry standard for trial cases. So the problem is harder than it looks for mass tort. And I don't think the value is that we use AI. It's the way we use it to accomplish the client's objectives in this space. So I would characterize us as, really an operational system built on years of mass tort specific expertise. And why mass tort is different. So mass tort, our view is mass tort is scale. And so mass tort requires structured data at scale. The clinical interpretation, as we talked about, is difficult on some of these cases. It's not a simple exercise. Because of the volume of records, the kind of cross-doc inference is really important to get to the truth on a specific case. And knowing the edge cases is really specific. So, we like our lane. We like this space. We think we think we're the best at it, and certainly the most experienced at it. Certainly over the last 12, 18 months, it's become a more competitive space. And you see companies that started out really focused on the individual tort case or demand letter generation, taking a look at adjacencies like mass tort and how they could play in it. So I think it will become, more competitive until the market, until the bubble in the market kind of settles itself.
Well, again, I can speak from our kind of heuristic. I think competition's good. I think it breeds, operational excellence, and probably in a world where you have been creating the industry, probably to some degree from a technology perspective, and competing against an antiquated way of doing this work versus perhaps in a world today and into the future where there's a little bit more competition, it actually gives you an opportunity to kind of rise above a little bit of that noise and have some of that differentiation, the expertise, the operational engine really speak for itself. So, I think it probably bodes well for Pattern in the future from my perspective. Matt, maybe we can wrap up here with one more. Pull out your crystal ball, like you to look ahead 3 to 5 years. How do you see the mass tort industry changing, and what role do you think Pattern plays in that in the future?
So I think we're on the journey now and driving the change to empower this industry really with better data. And over the future, I think that's going to result in leadership in these torts and courts being able to better navigate the litigations, have more confidence and trust in the dockets and the facts. And ultimately that will bring a better outcome, whatever that may be. And I'd reemphasize, we really focus on being truth tellers at scale here, not a vested in, a opinion or vested interest in one outcome or the other. But I think if you look at the fragmentation in the workflow today, from intake to record ordering to reviewing to data analysis to prepping claim forms or court required documents, there'll be a lot more optionality for firms. There'll be more efficiency. I personally believe that a platform play there will win, something that like really cleanly ties and integrates all these fragmented processes. I think what we view success as really what we're doing for firms today, market wide. I think that'll make a huge difference to the mass tort system.
Matt, I love it. I like the truth tellers at scale. I think that's kind of a fantastic objective, and I think Pattern's well on its way. Matt, it's a pleasure being partners with you. We really are big believers in what you and the team are building, and it's been a pleasure to be part of the Pattern story. Thank you for joining us in studio today.
Thanks, Gordon. Appreciate all the support.